Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis, right at the top. So we're just learning that one of the takanas that they made was that by a camp, the soldiers, that if someone was mace, he's kind of mekayma that he's buried in that spot that he died. He's not moved to another place. He's buried kaim maisa b'mekayma. So the Gemara has a kasha. Well, l'chayr, that's a davar pashut. We know that he's a mace mitzvah. And mace mitzvah is kind of mekayma. We didn't need a special takana over here for soldiers. Any mace mitzvah is kind of mekayma. The Gemara answers that what we're talking about by the soldiers is that even if he has a relative to bury him, so he's not considered a mace mitzvah, but by a soldier, by the camps, then he will be buried kayvenois mekayma. The Sanya we learn, they say mace mitzvah, because what is the definition of the mace mitzvah? Kol she'en lo kayver. If a person doesn't have relatives to bury it, but if he calls out and there's people, relatives to bury him, but when he's dying on his deathbed, if he calls out and he has relatives to bury him, that's not considered a mace mitzvah. So as far as a mace mitzvah is concerned, then he would not be defined. We're talking in a case where he would not be defined as a mace mitzvah. Nevertheless, by the machna, by the camps, the soldiers, he's kayvin noiseb and mekayma. Correct the Gemara. When we're talking about mace mitzvah, kayvin mekayma, is it true that a mace mitzvah is kayvin mekayma? Valhanya, we learned in the Brisa mace mitzvah, mace mutal b'sratia. If a person comes upon a mace that he's lying on Rishus Rabim in a road, so mefaneli minas ratia, the smallest ratia, they move him either to the left or to the right. They don't leave him lying on the road. So he's not kind of mekayma. He's not buried on the spot. Sada bor v'sada nir. If on one side there's a sada bor, there is a field that is fallow, that is not plowed or not planted, and on the other side of the near it, there is a plowed field. So we don't want to put him into the area, bury him in the area where it will ruin the plowing. We take him into the area which is the damage would be less. So so we remove him and we bury him in the field that's fallow. If on one side there's a plowed field, on the other side there's a planted field. Again, we minimize the damage. We don't bury him in the planted field. We bury him in the plowed field. But if they're all equal on both sides, they're either both planted, they're both of them are plowed, both of them are fallow, so there's no real difference between the two, then he chooses whichever side he wants. Al Kalpanim, we see over here apparently that he's not kind of mekayma. He's not buried on the spot on the road. We move him to the side. What we're talking about over here in this Baraisa, where he's moved, is where he has to be moved in any event, because he's lying along the width of the road. So he's lying around the width of the road, he's blocking the road. Kahanim, people cannot walk on the road without becoming Tomei. So therefore he has to be moved in any event, because he's blocking the road, and people won't be able to pass by without becoming Tomei, and Kohanim won't be able to travel there. So in such a case where we have to move him, then these are the options, and these are how we choose where to move him. But if we don't have to move him, if he is lying in a way, in a situation where he is not obstructing the traffic, where people can pass by, then we say mitzvah is kind of mekayma, and you bury him on the spot. So since in any event you have to remove him from the boundary, therefore there he can move him to any side that he wants. So another thing that was mentioned, another takana by the soldiers says, they don't have to wash. They're part from the Tils Yadayim. That patur is only Maim Rishayim. But Maim Achronim, they have to wash. Even the soldiers have to wash. Amar of Chiya Barashi, Mipnei Mamru Mayim Achreinim Chayva. Why is Mayim Achreinim an obligation? Mipnei Shemelech Staimis Yeshem Mesamsei Naim, because it's a zakana. Because there is a salt Melech Staimis, because the person in his eichel, in the food, he'll have perhaps this Melech Staimis, and if he touches his eyes, it could blind him. It's a zakana. Therefore, we say that even the soldiers have to wash. It's a chayva because of the sakana. Omar Abaye Umishtaka Bekuta Bechura said the amount of the salt is so minimal, it's only 1 grain in a core. A core is 30 saw. There's only 1 grain of it, but nevertheless, it's such a sakana, it can be so damaging, so he has to wash my machrein. What happens to a person who's not eating, but he's measuring salt? Does he have to wash his hands? Certainly does. That's a double portion. Certainly there's a chashash that he'll have this melech sedaimus and he has to wash his hands. Taisa says that nowadays this melech sedaimus is not shchiach, and therefore Taisa says, that therefore Taisa said that they were not knowing with my machreinim. The Goyen says that nowadays there still is melech staimus, but the Ritva says in any event, he says in addition to the chashad chayva because of the melech staimus, he says the Chazal were mesaken mayim achreinim in any event. They're mesaken mayim rishayim, they're mesaken mayim achreinim, and as the Mefarshim speak out, they're mesaken it for the covet of benching, the chashivas of benching, to show the chashivas and the covet of benching to wash the hands. So therefore, nowadays it would be nageya, even if we don't have chashash and melech staimus. It's part of washing before benching. So the pshat, therefore, according to this, is as follows: the distinction we made by the soldiers between mayim rishayim and mayim achreinim, that's only that we say mayim achreinim they have to, because it's a chayv, because melech staimus. If there's no melech sedaimus, then l'chayr mayim rishayim and mayim achreinim would be equal, and just like they're potter mayim rishayim, l'chayr they'd be potter from mayim achreinim. But where melech sedaimus is a chashash, then even the soldiers are chayv in mayim achreinim. And one of the other paturim we said is that they're potter from demai. At the tuah that they get from an amaretz, they don't have to take the meiser from it. This now we learned in the Mishnah Machilin as Aniyim Demai, poor people, Chazal were not makbid and machmir on poor people, and you're allowed to give them Demai, V'zachsanya Demai, and the soldiers traveling from place to place, they give them Demai, they can eat Demai, they don't have to take Meisim. Amr Avuna Tana Beishamai Amrim Ein Machlim Esanim Demai V'zachsanya Demai. Beishamai argue, they say we do not give them Demai. Beisil Amrim Machlim Esanim Demai V'zachsanya Demai, but Beisil says we do. Umelarev, and another patur the soldiers have is they don't have to make an eruv. Amr de Beirav Yanai Loishanu Eruv Chatzeres. That patur is only eruv Chatzeres. That people living houses in a common courtyard in a common area, that normally in order to carry, they would have to carry from the house into the Chatzeres, they would have to make an eruv. Here they patam already Tchumim Chayavim, but the Tchumim they are chayav. The chiyuv that you have, that you can't go 2,000 amas outside your Malkum Shvisa, they have that chiyuv of Tchumim, they do have. The Tani Rav Chia, because Rav Chia learned, like in Alav Tchumim, Dvar Torah, because he holds that Tchumim is a deraisa, that you get malchus for going beyond the Tchum. So therefore, the kula, it's only a kula, the Rabbanon or Mekel, on it's a Rabbanon, a chiyuv Rabbanon, like a Eruv Chatzeres to Mekel. But when we're talking about a deraisa, and he holds that Tchum is deraisa, therefore he says like him, therefore you can't be Mekel by soldiers. Now, this is the das of Rabbi Kiva, but the majority opinion is that it's a Rabbanon. There is a shitas that we're talking about when it's far away, when it's yud-based meal, then even that would be a deraisa. But the regular traveling going beyond the Alpine Mama, that is the shita of Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva holds that you're like an Aruvi Tchumim, but the majority opinion is not that way. Al Kolpanim, he says, since it's deraisa, the soldiers therefore are not permitted to go beyond the tchum. And you're telling me that there's malkas on going beyond the tchum. It says that how can you get malkas? You get malkas when the Torah says loy. Now over here, it's the Torah says al yetze ish mekayma. So if you learn that it's a derisive tchumim al yetze ish mekayma, you can't go beyond your place, beyond your makom shvi. So you can't go beyond the tchum. There the Torah says al. It says al. It doesn't say loy. Do you get malkas for that? The Torah says that you should not turn to Oivus Yadayim to Kishuv. You're going to tell me that there's no malchus for that? Of course there is. So you see that there is malchus, even though it doesn't say loy, even though it says al. So what's your kasha? So Gemara says, Rabbi Yonasan hachi kasha. This is a kasha. No, the kasha wasn't that it says al instead of loy. The kasha was that it's a lav shenitin l'sharas misas bezin. A chil Shabbos, a melacha for Shabbos has misas bezin. It has misas bezin, and therefore there's no malchus. And even where they gave him hasra for malchus and not misa, so lemaisa, in actual fact, there's not going to be an einish of misa. There's still no malchus. The whole lav shenitin l'sharas misas bezin ain't like it a lot. So therefore, there should be no malchus. There should be no malchus for going outside the tchum, because the isser in the Torah over here is an isser where it's a malacha, and it's a malacha that you would get a misa for. Now, even though tchum itself is not a malacha, and there's no misa, but it's nichlal in the isser. The Torah says al yetzish mekayma, which includes carrying, which is a malacha. Ravashi miksiv al yotzi. Ravashi says it doesn't say al yotzi, don't carry. Al yetzi ksiv. It says al yetzi, meaning, as the way Taisus speaks out, even though the pasuk al yetzish mekayma, don't go out from your place, it is a reference to carrying, and it does involve an issur of carrying. But primarily, according to Rabbi Chia, it's not to teach me carrying. It's primarily to teach me al yetze shmekayim, don't go beyond your tchum. So therefore, the ikar mashmois of the pasuk is not referring to a malacha, not referring to something where there's misas bezin. It's referring to the lav of going inside the tchum, and therefore he holds there is malchus. So the new parak talks about, which we discussed before, the pasei birois, oisen pasel birois, arba dyumdim nirm kishmayna di Rav Yehuda. So, as we mentioned several times, the Oila Regolim, they were traveling. They needed to be able to access water, and they had to give water to their animals. So if there was a bear of water, now normally in order to drink from it, you would have to make machitzas all around over here to enclose this as a reshus hayachid, and to make this completely enclosed as a reshus hayachid. They were traveling along. It was a reshus harabim. To completely enclose this and make this into reshus hayachid, to make it into reshus hayachid, and it would be a great difficulty for the Oila Regolim, for the ones who were traveling, the Oila Regolim who were traveling. The Chachamim made a kula. They said they're mekel that you don't have to make complete mechitzas. You make L-shaped mechitzas on the corner, so the corner mechitzas, and you do that on the four corners. You do it over here, you do it over here, and you do it over here. So let's just say, for instance, Whoa. So you have corners and corners here. You have these on the four corners. And therefore we would view this as being a mechitza, and a mechitza coming across, and this one here as well, here, and here, that it's completely enclosed. You have the water in the middle, and therefore you can give your animal to drink. So so it's four that look like it's arba diyumdim. This is a diyumid, it's L-shaped. 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's like 8 because there's really, each one is made out of 2. You have one this way and one this way. So it's 4 on the 4 corners, but it looks like 8. That's what Rav Yehuda says. Ramer says that there's shmeina, which look like 12, because he says because he says, in addition to the L-shaped, you have to put one single one in the middle. So you have your 4 that are like 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But then you have in the middle a single one. Middle one here, middle one here, here, and on this side as well, you have a single one. So you have on each side, you have the L shape, so for instance, on this side, so you have a chitza here, here, one in the middle, and then it goes in the same way on each side. You have the same scenario. So that's how he says. So that's why you have over here that it's the shmeina nerim kishnei maser arba diyum devar pshutim. Now we'll see that there makes a difference over here. There's a chilik between the two of them and how wide and how much of the open gaps you can have, the width of the open gaps, as the Mishnah will continue. So what is the height of each one of these posts? It has to be 10 tvachim, berachman shisha, and has a width, it has to have a width of 6. Even kolshu, and the thickness is a kolshu. There's no shiv for the thickness. Now Rashi learns that therefore each post has to be 10 high and it has to be an amma. Each post has to be 6. Rashi learns that the pshutim, according to Reb Meir, is also the same. That Rashi learns the pshutim is the same as the yumdim. Each one of the yumdim, the L shape, have to be an amma, 6 tvachim. He holds that the pshutim that are in the middle have to be the same as well. The Ritva brings down other shittas that argue, and he says no, it doesn't have to be a amma. It could be either a kol shehu, or now that height has to be 10, but the width doesn't have to be 6 tvachim. It could be a kol shehu, or some say 3 or 4, but it doesn't have to be the same width as the yumdim. So that's the machlokes rishonim. Now, what's the distance between these areas? Ubeineim kamal shtei ravaka shel sholosh baka divrei Meir. Rameir says the difference between the width between the two, the gap between the two, are you have like two teams of the cattle of oxen, like it has wide as 2 teams of the oxen, which have 3 ox in each team. That's what Rameir says. Meaning, and that there's a gap can't be more than 10 amas, which is the standard opening for when we say that is a Pesach, that a Pesach can't be more than 10 amas. That's considered a pirza. He says over here, there's no difference. It's the same thing. You can't have more than that. But that's what Rameir says, but Rav Yehuda Omer shel arba. Rameir says no. it's the two teams of the oxen, but each one has four of the oxen in it. So therefore the total gap is 13 1/3 amas, which is a cool over here. And the Chum made a special cool over here. The whole din to begin with is a drabonon. This we say that you can't have this type of a gap. In the mechitza, he said over here they were mekel and can have even 13 1/3. Kshura is v'loy mutoris. We're saying that the width is when they're tied together, not untied, meaning that it's a narrower gap. It's the amount, the gap that would represent, again, either 10 amas or 13 1/3, which represents the teams of the oxen, which are either two teams of 3 each, which are tied, or 4 each, which are tied, so either 10 amas or 13 1/3. And that width represents when you have the two teams, one is coming in and one is going out. That's the way the Ritva explains it. This is to facilitate the drinking of the animal, to give them to drink. So what would be normal is you want to drink. Now, as this one is coming out, this one's going in. This is going two-way traffic. So the maximum gap is either 10 amas to allow this type of two-way traffic of two teams of 3 each, or 13 1/3 amas, two teams of 4 each. Mutar lahakar l'be'er. Now, you can come closer to the bear if the bear is, let's say, over here. You can make this closer to the bear. You can make it closer. It's permitted to make it closer. As long as there's enough space for the para to be Rosh Aruba b'fnim and to be able to drink, right? So that otherwise we're concerned if most of the body of the animal, of the ox, is not inside and able to drink, we're concerned that you'll bring the water out to her and come to carry. So it's mutar lahakar l'be'er, but much they para Rosh Aruba b'fnim v'shaisa. It's also mutar laharchek kolshu amavad shiara b'pasim, and you can distance it as much as you want, as long as the gap is not more than that we discussed, either 10 or 13 1/3. But it doesn't matter how large this area is. Rabbi Yehuda says no, there is an absolute limit. Even if you're marba with the pasim and you make more posts and boards and block the opening, you still can't have an area of more than 5,000 square amas beisasayim that it encloses. Amr Lo, they said, the other Chaverim said to him, Lo Yamr beisasayim l'gin l'karpav. This limitation of sasayim is only made for a garden or a karpav, an large open area where they store things, meaning non-residential areas. But in this case of Rav Im Ayadir Isara Muksa Chaser, but if it was a deer, a place where the animals used to graze and the shepherds used to stay there and sleep over there, so or soyar, or it was a corral, or a muksa, or a backyard, or a chaser, or a courtyard, all of these have somewhat have either primarily or some residential applications, but they do have some residential applications. Then in those cases, we say afilo beis chameshes kurim, afilo beis asor kurim muter. Even 5-10 kurim are muter. So he said, therefore, in this case over here, where they used to travel in the camp, they say that we don't have this limitation of sasayim. There's no limit. And you can distance it, therefore, you can distance it as much as you want, as long as you add on posts so that the gap, the open space between, is not more than either 10 amas or 13 1/3 amas.